His grace. On Mount Calvary, take my place. Then I ask myself this question: who am I? Then I'm reminded of His words, I leave thee never. Just believe I'll give to you life forever. I wonder what I could have done to deserve God's only Son. Fight my battles, ooh, till they're won. For who am I? Who am I that the King would bleed and die for? Who am I that He would pray, not my will, thine answer I pray never know. Why He ever loved me so, that to an old rugged cross He'd go. For who am I? Who am I?
I don't know what we got this morning, but we've got something. I hate to start calling names for prayer requests because I always forget about a half dozen. Want to remember Dennis, want to remember Herbeline. If I forgot you, look over me. I'm just old and slow, but I do the best that I can. In the book of Matthew, if you turn with us to the 16th chapter, I want to read 21 through the 27th verses. And there are a lot of questions that I find every day that I have, that I didn't know that I had, that God's able to answer. And this book is so marvelous, it makes no difference. I could preach the same text every week after every week after every week, and I promise you, there would always be something there that is new and that will meet my need at that particular time. So there's a lot of things that God's going to straighten up for me today. I don't know about you, but I pray that He will. And we're going to be talking about prophet. I'm not talking about the men that prophesy in the Bible, but we want to talk about prophet. How many of you, your checkbook ever run in the red?
Never.
You ever had that problem? You go to pay your bills and you look and you say, hey, that's in the rear. There's not enough to bring it forward to pay what I've got to have. So that we all want to make a profit. I've seen people, and I have friends, that anything that they touch turns to gold. I remember back years ago that I had a friend of mine call me from England. And he said to me, I got a tip for you on the stock market. Now this might seem indignant to you, but it's not. It's common knowledge. And that was a time that the silicone breast implant, they were fixing to go down. And he said, this is an insider trader I have a friend that's in this that in 2 weeks is going to come out and kill the market. There's only one implantment that will be left on the market, and it has saline solution in it. He said, buy. Had a friend then, still do, in Clintwood, Virginia. He did a lot on the stock market. So I called David and I said, could you check this? Because I never had food with it. I said, could you check this and see if it's valid? A couple of days I didn't hear from him. I called him back and I said, can you tell me, should I try to do anything? And he said it like this. He said this is a small company, it's a pharmaceutical company, and said the lowest their stock has ever been is $15 a share, and the highest it's ever been is $35 a share, and it's been in existence for 90 years, and he said, it looks like to me, even if this is not true, it's a safe investment. I said, what are you going to do? He said, well, said, I thought enough about it, said, I bought 250,000 shares. That's pretty good. And it was $18 a share. Now, I can't count that high. Now, he's a multi-millionaire, owns several coal mines, and did a lot of investments. I know a lot of people has got money, but I don't have. Just, like rub shoulders with them every once in a while. Makes me feel better. And so, we had a particular small amount of money, $10,000, and so bought $10,000 worth. That wasn't much to his $250,000. 2 weeks to the day it came out on TV that the silicone implantments was off the market. I said, look at that. The saline solution implants is started up. Man, I tell you, I even subscribed, I did this, to the Wall Street Journal. Had it sent to the house. Wanted to look at the stocks every day and see what I had. Well, it went to 20, it went to 30, it went to 35, it went to 40, and I got nervous. Because all I could see is me losing every bit. Now, that was a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money, every dime I had. So I called David and I said, what should I do? He said, let her ride. And I thought, that's easy for you because you got a lot of $250,000 and only got 110. So I cashed mine in. And it went from 40 to 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90. And I said, why didn't I do that? Now here's the thing of it. I should have been tickled with that profit that I made, because that profit went way up from what I invested and had in my pocket. But then I regretted that I didn't stay longer so that I'd make more. Now you know what that is?
Greed.
Yeah. Do you have it?
Yeah.
All of us do. All of us do. So we're going to talk about profit. We're going to talk about loss. And Jesus, he didn't play the stock market. Nothing wrong with doing it if you want to do it. I did it one time, never did it again, because I just figured that that's like shooting craps. All I throw is snake eyes, but I did it that one time. So you read with us Matthew, the 16th chapter and the 21st verse. From that time forth began Jesus to shew unto his disciples how that he must go unto Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and raised again the third day. Then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, Be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto thee. But he turned and said unto Peter, Get thee behind me, Satan, thou art an offense unto me, for thou sufferest not the things that be of God, but those things that be of men. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose it, I, for my sake, shall find it. For what is it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in his glory, in the glory of his Father, with his mighty angels, or with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his own works. Now, leading up to this, Jesus, he had walked on the water at Galilee. Jesus had fed 4,000. Jesus had rebuked the Pharisees. And he told his disciples that the Pharisees were like, it was like leaven in bread. Now when you put leaven, when you put yeast in bread, it's going to swell up. It's going to be distorted. So if you take the Pharisees' doctrine and the Sadducees' doctrine and you mix it in with Christianity, you're going to get something that's going to be blown out of proportion, that never was, never will be, that will never work. So Jesus, after he did that, he looked at Simon Peter. And it seemed that Peter was a testy man. He was a man that questioned everything. But I'm beginning to understand more and more about Peter, because Peter operated out of the flesh. He had no spiritual insight. He couldn't see the things that was before his eyes spiritually, but he wanted to manhandle everything and everybody that came along. He was a man that was not afraid of the devil himself. If it was 10 men there, I'll guarantee you he'd wade into them with a tobacco stick if they all had knives. If there was men there that had guns, he would have waded into them barehanded. He was a man's man. He was a fleshly man. And everything that he did was according to nature, his fleshly mind. So we see that Jesus began to talk to his disciples and tell his disciples all these things. And then Jesus asked a question. Looked at Simon Peter, and he said, "Whom do men say that I am?" Now he wanted a newspaper report. He wanted a report from the region. He wanted a report from the Sea of Galilee to Jerusalem to Samaria. He wanted a report from the entire area. This is what he said. He said that some say that you're John the Baptist. Some say that you're Elijah. Some say that you're Jeremiah. And some of them even say that you're the prophet. Well, he wasn't satisfied with that. He got his opinion, what he had heard. Now he asked a direct personal question. I'm not concerned about what everybody else says about me and who they think that I am. I want to know personally. Now this is where it's coming to you and I. He wants to know what we think personally about him. This is what Peter says. Thou art the Christ, you're Jesus. Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. This is in the 16th chapter, 13 through 16. Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And this is Jesus' answer to it. Now you've got to remember that Jesus asked the question, who do men say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Peter said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And the 17th verse, it said, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed this unto you. Men did not reveal this. Now how do we know that? Because he just asked the question, whom do men say that I am? Men said you're Elijah. Men said you're John the Baptist. Men said that you're Jeremiah. Men said that you're one of the prophets. So he had asked the question, who do men say that I am? He got the answer, who men thought he was. He asked the question, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. So we know that the world did not know Jesus. We know that the world did not reveal Jesus unto Simon Peter, Blessed art thou, Simon Barjona, for flesh and blood hath not revealed this to you. Man hath not revealed this unto you, but my Father which is in heaven. Now, if you're going to have any spiritual eyes, it's going to come from God.
Right.
If you're going to have spiritual insight, the world does not know, and the world does not have the answer, and the world will never know. Because the world only sees through the eyes of flesh.
Amen.
So this is what he's saying. Simon Peter, 18th verse, and I say unto thee that thou art Peter. Now he asked the question, whom do men say that I am? Thou art the Christ, Son of the living God. Jesus said, you are Peter. I'm Christ. You are Peter. What's your confession? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Then he said, upon this foundation, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. The word prevail means to overcome. Will not prevail against it, will not overcome. And then he talks about he's going to give Peter the keys to the kingdom. The keys, he used the first key on the day of Pentecost when the Spirit of God came. The church gave birth. The second use of the key was when he went to Cornelius' house, and in a vision, Jesus or God spoke to him and let him know that God was no respecter of persons, that the plan of salvation was opened up unto the Gentiles. He gave the keys to him. He used both of those keys. He opened up the kingdom unto the world, that whosoever will, let him come and be saved. Now from there, Jesus began to tell him something. He began to say something that Simon Peter did not want to hear. Now remember, strong-willed, living in the flesh, was not afraid of any human being or any fleshly thing, always would rise to the occasion, loved Jesus enough to protect him against anything that would come along. So Jesus began to teach, and he began to show the disciples, you know, boys, I've got to go to Jerusalem. This is in the 21st verse. I've got to go to Jerusalem. And when I go to Jerusalem, when I get there, I'm going to suffer. I'm going to suffer many things. Of the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes. Now notice this. Jerusalem is where the temple was. Jerusalem was a religious center of the world. Jerusalem is where the priests were. Jerusalem was where the high priest was. Jerusalem was the place that the holies of holies, where God's presence would be. Jerusalem in the holies of holies in the temple is where the high priest would go in and give sacrifice to make atonement for the sins of the Jews. Now Jesus, being a Jew, he had confessed unto Simon Peter, and Simon Peter had said unto him, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus said, upon your confession I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. He went to Jerusalem. He said, I've got to go to Jerusalem. I've got to suffer many things of the Pharisees. Got to suffer many things of the priests, elders, and then be killed. And then rise again the third day. Now, he didn't have a bright future, did he? There's nothing bright about that. There's nothing worthy to even shout about. Now, we're talking about before the church was born. So he busted Peter's bubble. Why? Peter had seen him walk on water. Peter had seen him feed 5,000, 4,000. Peter had seen him touch the blinded eyes. But he still didn't have any spiritual mind about him. Everything was worldly and fleshly. especially in Peter's mind. And how about you? I heard something this week that just set my soul on fire. Ferguson has been set on fire this week in St. Louis. I pastored at Bonita Park for years. Bonita Park, when you get off the interstate after you pass through St. Louis, you got St. Anne, St. John, Ferguson, then you got down at the end, Bonita Park. That used to be a very exclusive area out there. Now it's really gone down over the years. We know from what's happened there, they nearly burned that place down, and it looks like they're not done yet. There was a professional football player, I can't recall his name, from the New Orleans Saints on TV, and they interviewed him. And they asked him about what was going on there. Man, you talk about a blessing. He said it's not a racial problem. It is a sin problem. Lord have God. Woo! I said, man, where have you been? This old guy, he weighs probably about 285, about 6'5". I said, where have you been? He said, the only answer to the problem at Ferguson is that Jesus Christ will forgive and bring all into unity. It's a sin problem.
Amen.
Oh, man. I said, that boy knows something. In fact, he knows somebody. In fact, he knows the author. In fact, he knows the one that gave his life to cure the sin problem. When you steal, what is it? Sin problem. When you have the truth and will not accept it and call truth a lie, what is it? Sin problem. When you make up your mind who's right and who's wrong before you ever have any evidence, what is it? It's a sin problem. When you will take and try to put down authority, what is it? It's a sin problem. But this old boy, I wish I could remember his name, but it slipped me. Man, he hit the nail on the head. He said, it's a sin problem. And Eric Holder standing up there saying it's a racial problem. Racial. That race hasn't got anything to do with sin. It affects both sides.
Right.
It is no respecter of persons. It is a domineering force. The most powerful thing that we run into in this world is sin, because sin not only can control you, sin can damn you, sin can send your soul to hell. But the good news is you can be forgiven of sin. So I've got to go to Jerusalem, and the priests and the elders and the scribes, they're not going to like me. They're not going to pray for me. They're not going to make a sacrifice for me. But what they're going to do to me is that they're going to kill me. They hate me so. Now get this picture. The next verse it said, and Simon Peter began to rebuke. And Simon Peter said, come here, Jesus. Get yourself over here. When I read that verse, here a sinner is telling the Savior that he's not going to do what he came to do. Boy, now that's powerful. 22nd verse, then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto you. Now this is what he is saying. I know more than you. How did he know more than Jesus? Because he was a physical man. He was judging Jesus by the physical nature. What if he had listened to Peter? He was telling Peter, I don't care why you're here. I don't care what your mission is. I don't care who you're from. This thing going to Jerusalem and suffering and being killed is not going to happen. Boy, that's devastating. Where would you and I be unless this came to pass? Where would the world be if this did not come to pass? So rebuke him. Rebuke him. Can you see him catching Jesus by the hand saying, "Get off of here"? Can you see him taking and putting his long finger up to Jesus? You don't know what you're talking about. This is not going to happen. Why? I'll kill them all before this takes place. Well, let's fast forward. Jesus went to Gethsemane, prayed 3 times, came out. Judas Iscariot had gone to the high priest, had sold Jesus. He sent the guard to come and take Jesus. And when they came, the first thing that Peter did was what he said he would do. This will not happen. He drew his sword and cut off the right ear of the soldier. He didn't have hot air in him. I promise you he wasn't blowing. He wasn't woofing. This is not going to happen. But then Jesus made this statement. He said, "Put your sword back in your sheath." He said, "Are you telling me that I cannot drink the cup that my Father gave me to drink?" Peter was telling him, I don't care what you're here for. I'm not going to see anything happen to you according to the flesh. I'm not going to let anything happen. Jesus said, "For this reason and this purpose I came. I came to suffer. I came to die. I came to bear the sins of the world. I did this." Then this is what Christ said to him. 23rd verse. "But he turned." Underline that. But he turned. Who turned? Jesus turned. Why did he turn? Because what Simon Peter said was not going to save anybody. In fact, it was going to damn everyone and keep everybody from being saved. Jesus said, "I ain't listening to more of this stuff." We kind of like it, don't we? We like gossip. What'd you say? Who'd you say that was? Oh, I would not have believed that in 1,000 years. Well, when did they do that? Jesus didn't want to hear it. He turned his back upon it. And he said, "You have offended me. You have offended." Have you ever been offended? We've been offended because somebody said something that was true that hurt our feelings. I had a friend, he's dead now. We were together and another guy came up and he said to him, "Do you know what so-and-so said about you?" And he told him. He said, "Yep, that's true and probably a whole lot more." So I adopted that. And I learned what anybody says about me, if I hadn't done it, I probably thought about it. And if I hadn't done it, I probably will do it. So I'm just guilty. If you want to talk, go ahead. I wish you wouldn't. But if you insist, let her rip. Hey, And then he said unto Peter, now you get behind me. Now I said a while ago that Jesus turned. And he turned which way?
Away from Peter.
Huh?
Away from Peter.
Nah. Nah. How could Peter get behind him if he was already behind him? Now think on that. Peter had took him and he got him off the side and give him a good chewing. I can see Jesus standing there, Peter running that mouth. But he turned. And he said, get behind me. Hard to get behind somebody you're already behind. I don't believe that. That's all right. We won't fall out over that.
Amen.
That's a perception. Get thee behind me, Satan. You offended me. Your offense unto me. For thou savorest not the things that be of God, but those things that be of man. Now this is important. This is going to explain the rest of the chapter. I missed this for years. Couldn't see it, didn't understand it, listened to what everybody else's opinion was, but now the Bible always explains the Bible if you look for it. You can never take one verse and say, this is it. You may have to go back 5 chapters. You may have to go back to the beginning and read it all, because he just doesn't shoot things out that means nothing. So in that verse, he said, you don't understand spiritual things. You don't understand what God is. You don't understand my mission. You don't understand why I've got to go to Jerusalem. You don't understand the things that be of God. All you understand is the things that be of man. Now notice 2 things. In the beginning he asked, who do men say that I am? John the Baptist, Jeremiah, Elijah, one of the prophets. Who do you say that I am? Thou art the Christ, the Son of God. Thou art the Christ. But he said, you don't understand that. Why don't you understand it? Because he said that he did understand, thou art the Christ, Son of the living God. And then when Jesus said, I got to go to Jerusalem and be crucified, he rebuked him. He's still operating in the flesh. He's still getting back to his old nature. That's when he told him, you're an offense unto me, get behind me. Why? Because you just discern those things, you judge those things according to the flesh, and you don't understand the spiritual things of God. 24th verse. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me. Now this is saying, I want to be a Christian. I want to follow in the footsteps of Christ. I want to be his child. I want to go to heaven. Now Jesus said there's a price. There's a price to be paid if you want to go. I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about living above sin. I'm not talking about living a sinless life. But this is what it costs. If any man will come after me, number 1, let him deny himself. Who are you? Who am I? I used to think I was the most important fella in the world. Come on now. I didn't think the sun couldn't come up if I didn't get up. You ever think about your importance? I didn't think anybody could have a good time if I wasn't there. I thought they'd have to shut it down. I thought if I didn't go to work, they'd have to call work off and dismiss it because I the most important wheel there. But boy, did I get a surprise. I found out one day the world really didn't care who I was. In fact, when I announced myself and they said, "And who?" Oh, aren't we something in our mind? Aren't we something in our own eyes? But he said, if any man will come after me, there's got to be self-denial. When you self-deny, that means you're nothing. That means you have no power to save yourself. That means that you are absolutely a dunghill in the eyes of God. Did you like that? That's what he called us later on in several many scriptures. Paul even called us that. So he said, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. And this is what I want you to see. And take up his cross and follow me. Now I want to know what your cross is. Never did understand this. What's your cross?
Burdens.
What?
Burdens?
No. What I always thought it was. What's your cross?
Duty.
Say it again.
Duty.
Duty. No. What's your cross?
Faith.
See? What? Oh, yeah. Now, see, our cross is enduring. Well, I always thought. You've got to look up to it. You've got to endure what Christ has given you. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's so hard to live a Christian life. Oh, the burdens and the trials and the tribulations I'm going through. I got to carry that cross for you. That's not what he's talking. What has he talked about until he gets down to there? What's he talked about? You don't understand, Peter, what God is. You just understand what man is. Who do men say that I am? Who do you say that I am? He compared all the way down natural things, man with spiritual things. Then he says, let you deny yourself, let you deny the natural things because the natural things can't do you any good, and let you take up your cross. Now what's your cross? Spiritual. Been comparing natural, now it's spiritual. Now you take up the spiritual thing. What spiritual thing? By grace are you saved through faith, the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. For it is right, it's faith, exercising that faith. That's our cross. Believing God. Believing God said it, and that settles it whether we believe it or not. He's the final authority on it. Take up your cross and follow me. Believe me. Now, how do I know that? It's because Jesus said, I'm going to Jerusalem, suffer many things, and be killed. What's Simon Peter saying? That ain't going to happen. Jesus said it's going to happen. The cross of Peter was believe it and hook up and go to Jerusalem with it. Boy, I ain't never heard it like this. Me neither. This is fresh too. I said, God, when he started dealing with me this week, I thought, what in the world are you doing? Here I am sick. Here I am coughing my head off. Here I am got a fever. Barbara's 10 times worse than me. She can't wait on me. And now you give me something like that. Oh, I'll tell you what, he's a great God. He gives us understanding. He gives us ability and power over that we can't understand. All right, here's the message. That was just warming up. 25th verse, for whosoever will save his life shall lose it. Now, what was Peter doing? Peter was trying to save the physical life of Christ. But Christ didn't come for his physical life to be saved. Christ came that his physical life would become sin and that it would be crucified on Calvary. That's how our salvation got here. If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, 25th verse, and whosoever will save his life will lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. Salvation, 26th verse. And what is a man profited? Remember we started out talking about profits and loss, talking about being in the black, being in the red. So he said, what? For what, that's a question, is a man profited if he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? One thing that's yours, besides your word, is your soul. When you get saved, your body does not get saved, but it is your soul that gets saved. So he goes a little deeper. And he said, where's the profit of being lost? What do you gain if you're lost? What does that pay? Every job I ever went to, I gave an interview and they told me what they wanted, and the first question out of my mouth is, how much am I going to make? Were you ever concerned about that?
Oh, yeah.
Had that on my mind. Sometimes I walked out and said, I ain't working for that because I'm making more than that now at my present job. So we're interested in how much it's going to pay. So Jesus is explaining it. What profit is it in you? What can you gain? What can you get if you gain the whole world? Now, if I had all the gold in the world, and if I was 6 feet, 6 inches tall, and I was the most handsome man in the world, I could dunk the basketball with both my arms over the rim. Women lined up and they just oohed and ahed when I walked by. And I drove a brand new car. In fact, I had 50 of them. And I had a house in every country in the world. And I liked for nothing. And if I were like Solomon with 700 wives and 300 concubines, what would I have profited? I'm still going to die and be planted in the ground no matter what I have, no matter what people think of me, I'm still going to return to the earth. So what if I profit? Then he comes up and he says this, and what would you give in exchange for your soul? The devil every day of our life said, hey, I'll give you this if you give me that. We've all seen movies where the people sell their soul to the devil. I sold my soul to the devil for a lot of years, and so did a lot of you. And then we saw, hey, that ain't going to get the world. That's not what I want out of life. That's not where life, I don't want to end up with my life there. I got 2 friends. And man, it breaks my heart every day. He had a body shop. He had new cars, new 4-bedroom, 4 or 5-bedroom house. Make probably $200,000 to $250,000 in cash through his business, plus what came over the books. Weighed 310 pounds, went to the doctor, and they said, you've got to lose weight. He got on crack. A little over a month, he was down to my size. He got his wife hooked on it. And she never come back mentally. You're liable to find her on the side of the road, and we have, without a stitch of clothes on. Found her in the graveyard, without a stitch of clothes on. The most modest woman that you'd ever want to meet in your life. Never in 10 years did I ever hear a vile thing ever come out of her mouth. Well, she got cranked up on crack, and it took her mind. It took his. It took his business. It took his two daughters. It took everything down the sewer. So he said, what would you give in exchange? What would you exchange for your son? Everything in this life is temporal.
Right.
If we had the whole world and everything therein, that is still temporary. Don't go past that. You say, well, what am I going to get if I serve God, take up my cross, and follow Jesus? How's that going to benefit me? Well, if you go down and check my bank account, got enough. Got enough to pay the bills. I promise you. That's a good thing. Because I've been to the place a few times that, man, I was ready to run for cover, not knowing where it's going to come from. So I'm not worried. There was a time I was. I'm not concerned there was a time that I was. How much I'm going to get and how much I'm going to have. I was very concerned about that. I'm not anymore. Because if I died today, and Miss Barbara died today, what would the things that we have, who would get those things? You say, well, I ain't got much. Well, whatever your much is, somebody get it.
Right.
They get the shoes that you like, and the clothes that you like, and that costume jewelry that you like. Well, it's just costume, yeah, but that costume is pretty in your eyes. You love it. You think you look good in it, and you do. Come on now.
That's right.
Yeah. So what am I doing? I don't make large deposits because large deposits is something I don't have. Used to have CDs, but I don't anymore. If I did, I'd take them out because they don't pay nothing. Used to have saving account. I'd take it out if I had it because it don't pay nothing. What would you do with it? I'd bring it home, put it in the coffee can, dig a hole, stick it in it. Because I'm afraid one day that there ain't going to be no cash around. They don't ever have to worry about stealing my identity. I took the credit card the other day. Now, laugh at me if you want to. That's all right. I'm not a credit card fella. And I'm not a debit card fella. I don't debit or credit. If I ain't got it, it don't get got. And when I went in and I took the credit card, Barbara said, take this. I said, I don't want to. I'll tell you how long it's been since I used a credit card. Back in the day, you'd go in and pay for something, they had those little bitty things that stick your credit card in and go whoop, whoop. Now that's been a while. So I went in and she said, swipe it. I thought, what do you mean, swipe it? What am I going to swipe? I ain't swiped nothing. I said, here. She said, swipe it. Here, Barbara done put me in an awful spot. Here I am, a cash man. Always been a cash man. And now she's giving me something I got to swipe, and I don't want to know what swiping is. Don't go tell everybody your pastor is that ignorant. Well, if you've never been exposed, you can't help yourself. And I said, honey, can you swipe it? She reached over the counter and she took it. I didn't know what you took. She swiped it. And I smiled at her and said, I sure appreciate that. It's rough to get old. That's my number one thing now. That just excuses it. So she handed it up there. I signed the ticket and I said, sure, thank you. Appreciate it so much. Now I'm a leg up. If I get that credit card again, I know how to swipe. Now this is the end of it. Laying treasure up for ourselves. Friend, there's nothing wrong with having money. Not a thing in the world wrong. It's not a thing in the wrong with having $1 million, 10 million. It's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing wrong with making all of it that you can. But don't this. You better watch it because it's the root of all evil. Amen. It will control you instead of you controlling it. I know a thing or two about that because one time or another I had a little bit of money. But that's in the past. And I'm glad, bless God, I ain't got nothing now except for the things that we have because it's all the things that we need. And this is what Jesus said at the end of it. 27th verse. For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Now here's what I'm doing. I'm not making bank accounts. I'm making eternal accounts. Every time that I do something that will glorify my Father, there is a deposit made in heaven by my name that is in the Lamb's Book of Life. That is made in the other book, other than the Lamb's Book of Life, the Book of Deeds. The Book of Deeds. Then one day when Jesus comes, he'll open up the Book of Deeds. And he'll look down and he'll see Glenn O'Neill Crow. That's my name. He'll look out beside of it and he'll look under it and he'll say, that's to the glory of God. That's to the glory of God. That was to the glory of Glenn. It's not going to get that way. That was to the glory of Glenn. See, there'll be some losses when we get there because we did it for ourselves. There will be gains when we get there because we did it to glorify Him. Let's stand together.